Okay, Shavua Tov. First of all, I want to apologize. I may cough a bit this morning. I have a little bit of a cold, and it's not pleasant always to listen to somebody coughing, so please forgive. What we're going to do this morning, we're going to begin, I can't imagine we'll finish it today, is Psalm 19. And Psalm 19 is a remarkable poem. It's one of my personal favorites. And what's amazing about this poem is the three different parts to it are each expressing a different aspect of praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, praising God. The first part is very apropos for Shabbat and Yom Tov. The first part is that the praise of God originates in nature. That you don't have to be a Torah scholar or even Jewish. It's very universal. Nature itself praises Hashem. Now, I say that this is very apropos of Shabbat and Yom Tov because when you look at the Shir Shel Yom for Shabbat, Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbat, which we'll do later in the year, you see that the first part of that poem talks about nature praising Hashem and recognizing the greatness of Hashem through nature. So that is apropos of Shabbat. And this is the first of the poem Psalms that's added in Psukei de Zimra on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Now, if you daven Nusach Ashkenaz like I do, or as I do, Psukei de Zimra on Shabbat is Baruch She'amar, Hodu, and then Psalm 19. It's the first that gets added on Shabbat and Yom Tov. If you daven Nusach Sfard or Edot Mizrach, then you start with Hodu, and then comes this poem. So, but it's the first additional poem according to both groups. And one of the early commentaries, the Vudraham on Sidur, says, we just started. One of the first commentaries on Sidur says the reason that it's there is because on Shabbat and Yom Tov, we're supposed to have more time to daven. Now, as we're not rushing off to work. Okay. Now that I'm retired, I'm never rushing off to work. My father, Oliver Shalom, used to have this. I'm sorry? I got here. My mother, Oliver Shalom, put on the refrigerator when my father retired a little sticker, a little magnet that had a guy sitting on a rocking chair and said, retirement means twice as much husband for half as much money. So, so it's okay. Okay. So now that we're retired, we can have more time to do things, Okay. Yeah. But not for lunch, right? Can't you go somewhere for part of the day at least? So, but the idea is that, Sheshet Yomim Tavodu, 6 days you're supposed to work. And so there was sort of like a compromise amongst Chazal. How much can I daven on any day? Okay? And now this is a machloket in the Gemara. Some people say you should daven all day, every day. Other people say, no, you have to limit it because you're supposed to work. I mean, we know that these philosophic discussions exist. However, everybody agrees, Shabbat and Yom Tov, there is more time. So since there is more time, let's add things. And this one is the first of those which is added, and it's added because what are we supposed to do with the extra time? And it's praise Hashem. And this is considered a prototypical praise of Hashem. And it starts with natural phenomena. Now, it's our first attempt to say how wonderful HaKadosh Baruch Hu is starts with nature. And so that's what this poem starts with, and it's a beautiful way of doing it. I just want to mention the Levush, who is another mystical commentator later than the Avudraham. He said, but you don't add too many psalms on Shabbos because you have to eat. You have to eat before noon. So he says, it's very important to get that second meal, that Shabbos morning meal. It's supposed to eat before. So he says it's good to add, but don't go overboard. And okay, I like that. We like, we like these more compromising positions. But now let's begin the poem. The first line is a throw up. It's throw off. It's quite often referred to as a superscript. Lamanatech Mizmor David, and we saw this phrase before. Lamanatech Mizmor David means that David was inspired with this poem, which is both a poem but also music. Lamanatech means that there is music to it. Okay, some people translate it for the conductor, the one that runs the music. But when it says Lamanatzeach, it means that at some point in time, there was music to it, which is interesting because this is not a poem that you think of as being set to music, which is a shame because it's very, very beautiful. But okay. And then Mizmor David means HaKadosh Baruch Hu inspired David. There is Mizmor David and there's LeDavid Mizmor. When it's LeDavid Mizmor, King David started writing it himself, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu inspired him. When it says Mizmor David, the inspiration, the divine spark, however you explain it, started first, and then King David went with the divine inspiration, the Ruach HaKodesh. Okay. I'm not so interested in that. Now I'm interested now in Bet through Zion, which is the first third of the poem and the first concept of the poem. And the first concept of the poem is our praise of Hashem begins with nature. And the first line, if you notice, I underlined a lot of words in Bet, Gimel, Dalit. Those all are words that talk about expressing yourself. So King David, who of course was so amazing with words, right? I mean, he was just a great poet and expressed himself beautifully, is using all of these different words to mean that the glories of God and of nature must require us saying something. You can't stand dumbly before the wonders of nature. The wonders of nature themselves tell the story. It's like you've got to say something, even if it's only wow, but you just have to say something. That's why there's all these words meaning express yourself, say it. Okay, think about the words for it. Okay, Hashamayim misaprim kevod kel. The heavens relate, tell, the wonders declare. I'm not sure Misaper is declare. Recount is better, right? Tell the story, right? Tell this, recount, declare. Okay, I mean it's not bad, but I don't think it's right. The heavens recount, I like that. The glory of God. How do the heavens recount the glory of God?
On a daily basis.
Yeah, how do they do that? By just being there. You say, "Wow, isn't that amazing? God made the heavens." That reminds me of the joke about Sherlock Holmes and Watson. They were sleeping, in Scotland, out in the wilds, and in the middle of the night, Holmes wakes up Watson and he says, "Look at the sky. What does that mean?" So Watson looks at the sky and says, "It means the glorious God has created heaven and earth, and it just shows us the wonders of nature and reinforces our belief in God." And so Holmes turns to Watson and says, "No, you idiot. It means that our tent has been stolen." Okay. Anyways, but that's like the nice idea. That's like the nice idea that when you look at the heavens, you're supposed to be moved to say, isn't Hashem amazing? Now, there's a lot I can say here. But before I give the mystical interpretation, I just want to say an editorial comment that's, for me, a little upsetting, but it's true. We, in the post-Edison world, really don't get to appreciate the night sky. And there's what they call light pollution. We just can't see things in the sky like we used to be able to. I mean, I even know the difference from when I was a kid. And when you go someplace where there isn't any, human developed ambient light, like you go into Midbar Yehuda, although I'll say the Negev. Most of Midbar Yehuda is under the PA today. Don't go there. But if you go to like the Negev, and you can see, wow, there's stars, there's millions of stars up there. But when we look around in our cities, you just don't see it. It's sort of sad that we've lost that connection to the stars. Most of us who are city dwellers. Beersheba even. The first time I was ever in Beersheba was 1983. It was a sleepy little town, and the stars were amazing. And now it's a big city with, tremendous amount of light. It's you have to go south now into the Negev to see the glories of the heavens, and it's a shame. It's a reality of the modern world. Okay, let's get rid of that. So the pshat is that you look at the sky and you go, wow, look what Hashem made. That's not the Kabbalistic point of view. The Kabbalistic point of view is that the things in heaven, the sun, the moon, the stars, are literally singing God's praise. And it's called the music of the spheres, or sometimes called the harmonies of the spheres. And our mystics weren't the only ones to see this and to talk about this. There are a lot of great astronomers in the pre-modern age talked about that we want to mathematically figure out how the stars, the moon, and the sun and the earth move, because if we can mathematically figure out the patterns of their movement, we can reproduce the music of the spheres. And this idea was so important that it was the motivating factor in the scientists who discovered the laws of planetary motion, whose name was Johann Kepler, who died in 1630. And he really believed that you could, if you get the mathematical relationships of how planets move, you could play the music. You could hear the music that's going on in the heavens. That's what people believed. And I want you to know his work was so inspiring that one of his assistants was a Talmud of the Maharalmi Prague, David Gans. Johann Kepler knew the Maharalmi Prague, and the Maharalmi Prague told one of his students who had tremendous abilities in mathematics, David Gans, who was a from Talmud Chacham, worked with Kepler on this endeavor for the purpose of discovering the music that this pasuk is referring to. And this idea is very, very beautiful. And there are even modern composers. There was I find it very boring. So, there was a composer, I forget his name, a Russian composer who wrote a piece called The Music of the Planets. And it's on, YouTube. It's very boring. It just goes on and on and on very slow. But it's a beautiful idea that the heavens inspire us in many ways. Pshat inspires us to say, isn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu amazing? Okay? So first of all, Shamayim Misapim Kvod El, it either means that, you look at it and it tells us about God, or they're actually singing God's praises, like they were like psalms in heaven. Uma'ase Yadav Magid Harakia, and the firmament tells over the actions of God's hands. Now, what is the rakia? I don't know. The firmament. The rakia, it's not an easy term to define. My translation here says the sky. You have sky? Usually we say the firmament. What? Right. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to give you an interpretation. In other words, there are a lot of interpretations, and the word rakia is an important word because it gives us a beautiful modern Hebrew word, reka. Reka means background. So it means background, like a background check done by the Shin Bet, okay? But it also means background, like in a photo or something. The reka is the background, okay? So the rakia is like the background. Apparently, and this is based on the psukim in Breshit Aleph, in the beginning of Genesis, where heavens and earth are created. Rakia is apparently the separating factor between the physical realm and the spiritual realm. And that we believe that there is this barely permeable like barrier between the spiritual realm, and that barrier is the rakia. And when you talk about in Kabbalah, there are sfirot. Some of the sfirot are on this side of the rakia, are more physical in their nature, and some of the sfirot, especially the last three, Chachma Bina Dat, the intellectual ones, are on the other side of the rakia. So we don't know here what it means. But I can tell you what the Rambam believed it meant. And his position we no longer accept. The Rambam believed, like many pre-moderns that tried to understand astronomy, that there are shells that are like physical. And like the moon is in a shell that goes around the earth. And that shell is a rakia. That there are these, it's not that they're moving based upon, based upon Newton's laws of planetary motion, okay? They're not moving in that way. That's, what's making them stay in place is that there is a firmament. There is something holding it there. And all the stars and all the planets have an invisible shell around it, and those are rakiyas. We don't accept that. But whatever the rakia is, it's something way up in heaven that hints again to Hashem being behind.
But it is a route.
It can mean that. Yeah. The route or so we say in the Northeast, the route. But okay, no, it could be the route. But they felt it was a physical thing, that you couldn't like send a spaceship through it type thing, It was holding them in motion in place. Sorry.
So, not interface.
I think interface is a good translation, yes, but the Rambam didn't, and a lot of the earlier astronomers didn't. They felt that there were these physical barriers, that's what these rakia was. But I like interface, yeah. It's like the membrane or the interface between us and the spiritual realm. And that generally you can't get through it, but some things can. Some, neshamot can get through it, and Hashem's dikta can get through it, and our mitzvot, our zchuyot, our merit gets through it to heaven. But I like it. Interface is actually good. I like that, actually. Yeah. So that's the first pasuk. So in other words, we're saying that God's handiwork, the heavens themselves, are busy moving us to recognize the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gimel, the second line, but the verse 3. Yom liyom yabia omer. Day by day, this material is expressed and said. Yabia is another term meaning to talk, to express something. V'layla l'layla yechavedat. And from evening to evening, there is an expression of this knowledge. Okay? There's a difference between daytime and nighttime. What's the difference? Well, daytime is supposed to inspire certain things, and nighttime inspires other things. The way most of the rabbinic meforshim understand this is daytime is more Torah shebichtav. In the daytime, you spend more time learning Tanakh, learning divine dicta, and nighttime is more Yechavedat, is more Torah shebal peh, more rabbinic stuff. Because some stuff is clearer and the other stuff requires a heavier level of personal involvement and ingenuity, and that's the nighttime stuff. There's nighttime stuff and there's daytime stuff. Now, I don't think that's pshat in the pasuk. Pshat in the pasuk means that we see Hashem in different ways. In the daytime, the beauty of scenery teaches us one thing about Hashem. At nighttime, the beauty of that scenery teaches us something else, and it builds on itself. It's day to day, it builds, right? And night to night, it builds. But historically, these phrases we use to mean Torah study. That we use different kind of Torah study in the daytime, and there's different kind of Torah study in the nighttime. But again, it's continuing this idea that this day to day, night to night, you just can't help but be impressed and moved and energized by what's going on in the heavens. Okay, Dalit. Ein omer ve'ein devarim b'li nishma kolam. There is nothing you can say. There are no words or ideas without hearing their voice. Everybody hears this music. Everybody hears this poetry. Everybody hears this message of the heavens. Everybody. And it's like, if you say you don't, you're lying. You're lying. And we know there are people that make believe. They don't wake up in the morning and go, wow, what a beautiful, well, sometimes we don't, that's true. But generally, when we take a look, you go to the Grand Canyon, okay? There's nobody that goes to the Grand Canyon that doesn't say, wow, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is an amazing artist. Everybody says that. I don't care, whether you're an atheist or not. Everybody does it. So it says people say they don't say it, but everybody says it. Everybody hears it. Everybody is moved by this stuff. And what's beautiful is to sometimes listen to some astronomers who claim to not be, believers. However, when they show you some of the photographs that they've taken in outer space of some amazingly beautiful stuff, many of them say you just cannot help but be moved and inspired. They end up saying religious sounding things. And that's what verse Dalet is saying. And it's just very, very powerful. It's so powerful that we cannot avoid it. I just want to go back to Gimel. I forgot to say something. I'm sorry. Yechavedat. This is a term that's come into yeshiva lashon. There's yeshiva lashon. Most yeshiva lashon is like Yiddish, right? Or a little Aramaic. But this is a Hebrew expression that has become a famous yeshivish expression, and they'll say that you're having a discussion with your chavrusa, okay? Or the Rabbi will say to one of the Talmidim, what's your chavat dat? Chavas das, right? It depends on the yeshiva, you're right. What's your chavas das? But it doesn't make a difference whether it's, a black yeshiva or a white yeshiva, Zionist, Haredi, it doesn't make a difference. Everybody uses the expression, they just pronounce it differently. Chavas das means what is your considered opinion about something. Chavas das means something that you've thought about and now are expressing what I feel on that topic. What's your chavas das? Which literally means your considered opinion, and that's not what it means in the pasuk. In the pasuk, it means again that nighttime is expressing an opinion about the presence of Hashem, but it's come into yeshiva lashon to mean what is your considered opinion on an issue, and it comes, of course, from this pasuk. You wonder in yeshivas how many guys know it comes from this pasuk. I'm sort of skeptical. Yeah, sadly, Tanakh is not a big deal in many yeshiva. Okay, but now let's go to Hey. I apologize for that, but I didn't want to leave that because it's a beautiful expression that you can use, when you're in the middle of a discussion or something. You can say, no, what is your chavat da'at? Bechol haaretz yatsa kavam uviktzei tevel mileim. In the entirety of the earth, okay? In the entirety of the earth, b'chol haaretz yatsa, there goes out kavam, their kav. Now, what's a kav? A line. Now, kav, by the way, it's also from yesterday's Haftorah. Kav l'kav, tzav l'tzav. It sounds like sort of gibberish in yesterday's Haftorah. And there's some portions that say that it's supposed to be sound like gibberish. The kav means, and here my translation, I'm very disappointed in JPS. I have their voice carries throughout the earth, and then I have a footnote that bases it on the Septuagint. That's not what it means. How does their message goes out? Their message goes out. Okay, that's fine. A kav is a line. Now we know we use that term for buses, a bus line. Okay, and we can use the same term for a phone line. Okay, we don't hear people talk about phone lines like when I first made Aliyah in 1983, and we had to wait 7 months to get a phone. Right? I mean, it's a different world out there, right? Okay. Now people have their phones before they make Aliyah. I mean, it's waiting for them at the airport. So it's a different world out there. But the idea of a kav means a connection. And this gives us the term tikva. Kaveh el Hashem, chazak v'yametz libecha v'kaveh el Hashem. And I have 2 grandsons named Kaveh. And it's the same word. It means the spiritual connection. Like the bus is a physical connection, or the phone line's a physical connection. It's called a kav. There's a spiritual connection that's called a kav. If you look at early representations of the 10 sfirot, you can go online and look for pictures of the sfirot. All of the late ones, when I say late, I mean the last 500 years, show it, or 600 years, show it sort of like a matrix of interlocking lines. But if you go before the 1300s, you go before the 14th century, all of the representations of the sfirot were concentric circles nesting within each other. Okay? And the whole idea was how hard it is to get from down here to up there. You have to go through 10 steps, or 7 steps, depending upon the system. We'll keep with the 10. Okay? 10 steps, and it's very hard. Very hard. Each step was a major effort. But all of those show what's called the kav, a line connecting heaven and earth. So even though when Hashem created heaven and earth, God placed many barriers and many steps between here and there, God maintained a kav, a line, so that certain things can directly go from down here to up there, some of our actions, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu could send certain things from up there directly down here. And the term meaning those, the things that sort of bypass the red tape, okay? That's kav. Kav is the stuff that can go directly from here to heaven, or directly from heaven to earth. And that kav that Hashem maintains, this connection to heaven and earth, that's what gives us tikva. That's what gives us hope. Hope is that connecting line between us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what's being referenced here in this pasuk. So, I mean, all of these other things that people said are okay, But for me, for my money, the way to translate this is Bechol ha'aretz, throughout the entire physical creation. Yatsa kavam, their line, their connection goes out. It's all interconnected. I'm sorry? Extend. Could be, yeah. But it's the idea of interconnectedness, that Hashem may be behind a pargod. Hashem may be behind a curtain, or behind some sort of membrane or whatever, or an interface. Nice word as well. Hashem may be behind that, but we believe that there's stuff that comes through. Okay, sort of like osmosis or something. I don't know, but there is connection and there is interconnectedness, and we feel it. It was an interesting idea amongst biologists. I think in the 70s that there were biologists that were concerned that there wasn't enough time for evolution to have developed humanity. Okay, that even though they believe that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, okay, they said that still wasn't enough time, because the first life seemed to have popped up very quickly after the Earth was capable of sustaining life. Now, we don't have a problem with that, because we say that everything happened with the snap of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's fingers, right? So it doesn't bother us, but it's an interesting question. You know, if you believe in evolution, it's an interesting question. By the way, Rav Kook believed in evolution. Evolution. He thought it was a wonderful, marvelous idea. That's another discussion, another time. Okay? I don't think that believing in evolution is necessarily heresy. Okay. But let's leave that for another time. But they said something beautiful, and they had some proof of it. They said the first life on Earth came from outer space. It wasn't E.T. It was microorganisms that were on meteors. But think about the idea. We're all made of star stuff. We're all connected to everything. So I don't know if the biologists that were making the point saw the poetry of it, but that's what this pasuk is saying. That we're all part of the same phenomenon. And that's just amazing and just beautiful. And that's what we're supposed to see when we look at the night sky. And that's the kavam, that we are all interconnected. That was the term used, interconnected? Yeah, that's fine. Uvitzei tevel milehem. And to the furthest extent, to the end of the world, okay, goes their words. To the end of the world goes their words. I have to be careful how I say that. The edge, okay? And that there is no place, that these ideas don't extend to. In other words, we're someday we're going to get into spaceships and go out there, but we're still just as connected to Sheshit Yemei Breshit. We're still just as connected to the first chapter of Genesis as we always were. In other words, this pasuk is not concerned. I remember in 1969, when the first man walked on the moon, and we had very funny weather that summer in Boston, and there was a woman that I worked with at Gillette. That was my summer job after my freshman year at YU. And she was saying, this bad weather is because we sent men to the moon. Hashem, she didn't say Hashem, she was an evangelical Christian. God didn't want us doing this. This is our punishment. And that's not a Jewish point of view. This is not a Jewish point of view. When that question was asked of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zichron Livracha, he said, if we can get there, it's not Shemayim, it's Aretz. Aretz is the places we can physically get to. And the story is told, by him, that he watched on TV. He wrote a book called Emet Liakov, this is Perish on Chumash, and in the Perish he talks about watching on TV when Armstrong jumped onto the moon. He just wanted to see it. And he said it was amazing, and he was very much into it. Sadly, after he passed away, the book was republished and that was edited out. They didn't want Rabbi Yaakov watching television. Wow, that would be terrible. Of course, the funny part of it is the book was called Emet Liakov, Truth. And so it's like the edited version was like the non-truth of Rabbi Yaakov. But okay, but this idea is very powerful. It goes everywhere. We're never going to lose the sense of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because it's everywhere. Okay, Lashemesh, some ohel by him. And it's like God put the sun in a garage. Okay? This is just a setup for the next pasuk. Now, at nighttime, you can't see the sun. Now, Chazal really believed that the earth was round, and they talked about the sun going around. They by the time of Chazal, then did David HaMelech know that? I don't know. Okay? But this is a setup for verse Vav. That there is a tent, there's a garage, where the Shemesh is at night. And then what happens in the morning? V'hu kechatan yotzei mechupato. When you get up pre-dawn and you daven with Netzach Hama, you daven with the budding of the sun, with the bursting forth of the earliest rays of the sun, it's an amazing experience. One of the things that I'm disappointed when I daven Vatikin at the Kotel, you can't see the sun. I mean, you were looking at clocks. Okay, there are clocks all over the place, right? Telling you when, by the way, inside the cave part, I don't know what you call, that area by Wilson's Arch, they have this clock that tells you when Nates is and when Chatzot is, and one of those, like computerized clocks, But you're missing it. When we used to hike through Midbar Yehuda, and when I was with the yeshiva in Efrat years ago, we used to hike, and we would daven with Netzach Hama in the morning. It's amazing. Or you go to Mitzada and you daven with Netzach Hama and you're davening and watching the sunrise. It's just amazing. And that's V'hu kechatan yotzei mechupato. The sun, when it rises, it's been in the garage all night, right? And then at first light, it comes out and it's shining and it's glorious. And the best way that they can use to describe it is it's like a bridegroom at his wedding, okay? When he just glows, okay? I've had two sons married. One got married at night and it was harder to see. But my son that got married in the daytime, he was really glowing. It was really like, wow. This expression is not only used to describe a chatan, but this expression gets borrowed in a very famous poem to describe whom? I wish I could sing. If I could sing it, then you'd really appreciate it. The Kohen Gadol coming out of Kodesh HaKodashim. It's part of the poem Mara Kohen, that he's compared to the chatan and the sun coming out. Because he's glowing and shining, in thanksgiving and in warmth for the Jewish nation. The Kohen Gadol is also like this when he came out of the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. But it's the sun coming out in the morning is supposed to be inspiring. We're supposed to get that sense of something special, significant happening. And that, of course, is what's going on. Yasis Kigibor Larutz Orach. He's joyous like a warrior who is running his path. A great warrior who's either just won the battle or is confident he's going to win the battle, and he comes out, with the spear in his hand, and yay, wow, you should cue the music for Chariots of the Gods, when they're running and then they're running the marathon and everything. Okay, it's like, wow, that's the second image. That's the second image, and I want you to know, you can think of the Rocky films, and the theme, cue the theme of Rocky running up the stairs at the At the Art Museum in Philadelphia, another Philadelphia reference. I did that once. They have a statue, yeah. I did that once. In 1999, I ran up the steps, and there was a woman looking at me, and I said, "I've always wanted to do this." So I don't think I could make it today, but anyways, it was like. But that's the second half of the pasuk. The first half of the pasuk is this very spiritual image of the Chatan or the Kohen Gadol. The second half of the pasuk is a very physical image of this happy warrior. Happy warrior. Who was the happy warrior? Hubert Humphrey was happy. Al Smith was the happy warrior. Maybe they used it more than once. You don't look old enough to remember Al Smith, but okay. But we've used that expression, the happy warrior. That's the second half of the pasuk. The victorious. There's a sense watching the sunrise is inspiring both physically and spiritually, and that's what's being said in the pasuk. King David really got it, And then this ends the first third of the poem. Mitzei hashamayim motza'o utekufato al kitzotam. From the ends of the heavens, motza'o, it comes out. Now, the it here is again on pshat level, the sun, but there's more going on, right? It means the inspiration, it means the nature, it means all of this. And the translation is rising places at the end. It's at the, it comes from one end. Motza utekufato al kitzotam, and his tekufa. What's a tekufa? Circuit. A tekufa means a period, an era, it means a periodic amount, right? And his tekufa, his track across the heavens, okay, goes from one end to the other. In other words, ein nistam mechamoto, nothing is hidden from God's Son. What's that mean? Nothing's hidden from God's Son. Well, it means in the daytime everything's enlightened by it. Okay, but what else does it mean? I mean, there's a simple and beautiful image. I'm not denying that, but what is another idea? Nothing is hidden from God's Son means nothing is hidden from God's vision, from God's attention, from God's concern. Everything. The Son is God's representative. Now it's interesting. This is one of the few places in Tanakh where the term for the Son is Chama. Generally, the term for the Son in Tanakh is Shemesh. So we're going to talk about those two terms for just a minute. Now, we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Eliezer ben Yehuda. It's like when I taught in elementary school, I have to always remind the kids that there was actually a person before there was a street. Okay? Ben Yehuda, I was there. No, not that. He did a number of wonderful things. And one of the wonderful things that he did was he decided, when he has a choice of words, to take the Tanakhi word, the biblical word, and not the rabbinic word. If you look in rabbinic literature, the Mishnah, the Gemara, whenever they talk about the sun, they call it Chama, which comes from the word Cham, or source of heat. While the Torah, Tanakh, uses the term for the sun, Shemesh. Shemesh, just like on Hanukkah, a shamash means a servant. The sun is the servant of Hashem. And that's what's going on in our pasuk, both ideas. That the sun is the representative, reminding us of God's presence. And that nothing is hidden from the warmth and light of the sun, meaning that just like God's representative is everywhere, so too is Hashem's concern and Hashem's, Hashem's, hashgacha, right? Control, that it goes everywhere. And that's what this verse 7 is saying, that just like the extent of the sun's rays and warmth and light, all of that is everywhere, so too is Hashem. and Hashem is represented on earth to a certain extent by the Shemesh. When you read this pasuk, you're sort of reminded a little bit, please forgive me, a little bit of Avodah Zarah. What do I mean? You're reminded a little bit of Avodah Zarah. The sun is so impressive, that it's understandable that there were people that worshipped it, right? I mean, when you read the Rambam at the beginning of Hilchot Avodah Zarah, he goes into this idea. There's a certain amount of logic and a certain amount, it sounds reasonable. I mean, not to us anymore. But look what David HaMelech did with that. Yes, the sun is amazing, and yes, the sun, is everywhere, and the heat, and we can't live without the sun and all of that. But what is the sun? Oh, it's his sun. It's God's sun. It's God's shamash. The sun doesn't serve planet Earth. The sun serves God. And so, David HaMelech, who was sensitive to the fact that many of his own citizens, his own servants were Ovdei Avodah Zarah. And the Jewish ones too. We know throughout the entire First Temple period, there was a lot of Avodah Zarah going on. But King David is taking that idea and sublimating it to worship of Hashem. And that's very important, and that's very, very beautiful. Okay, we're going to stop in just 2 minutes. Okay, we're going to stop in just 2 minutes. I want to just give you a heads up about the middle of the one. Look, I'm not giving a homework assignment, but the middle of the poem is, I think, just amazing. And it's as you can see, it's written as sort of like a chart, and it's 3 psukim with 6 items in it. And what we're going to do next week is we're going to try to understand, first of all, what the 6 items, which represent not the world of nature, but the world of Torah and Jewish philosophy. In other words, the beginning of the poem is, I'm amazed by God because of, in the words of Immanuel Kant, because of the starry sky above me, right? That's beautiful, and that's great, and King David did the job. However, in the middle of the poem, I'm amazed by God by studying Torah. And Torah is described with 6 ways. It's Torah Hashem, Edut Hashem, Pekudei Hashem, Mitzvah Hashem, Yirat Hashem, Mishpat Hashem. Torah is described in 6 ways, or Jewish philosophy is described in 6 ways. And then each one of those 6 ways has an adjective saying how wonderful it is, and then has 6 things that those 6 aspects of Torah affect us on. So if you have some time between now and next Sunday, you can look at it and try to see. I mean, I'm going to tell you my opinion, and some other people's opinions, but there's nothing wrong with your opinion. One of the great things about poetry is once you read the poem, it's yours. There was a famous, I mentioned this in our first class, there was a famous article that was written by, I come from New England, and the great poet of New England, of course, was Robert Frost, okay? And he, I think in the Saturday Evening Post, doesn't make any difference, in some magazine, wrote an interpretation of the poem, stopping in the woods on a snowy evening. And because he was upset by some of the interpretations that came out, and he said, I want you to know what I was thinking when I wrote it. And he was attacked by many, many people because said it's a great poem. But once it's out there, it doesn't belong to you anymore, Mr. Frost. It belongs to everybody. And this is certainly true of Tehillim. I'm not sure it's true of every part of Tanakh. I don't think it is. But I think it's true of Tehillim. And so your interpretations, are as valid as anybody else's. So if you get a chance, if you don't get a chance during the week, Shabbat morning, when you're in shul and you're reading this poem, read it and think of what are the 6 ideas that David HaMelech is sharing with us. What can I learn from that? Where does it take me? Okay, how am I different? in my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of these 6 ideas. And so that's what we're going to do Bezrat Hashem next week. And then we'll end up, the end of the poem is about prayer. So in other words, what we've got in the poem is the beginning is nature, Torah, then tefillah. What a beautiful way to start the extra Psalms on Shabbat, talking about first nature and how nature inspires by the Kadosh Baruch Hu, what Torah does for our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then how prayer enhances our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and that's what's going on in Psalm 19. Okay, what a great way to expand our horizons with the long davening that we do on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Okay, and we'll pick it up at that point. Everyone should have a Shavua Tov, a wonderful week. I hit finish.